This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast. I'm Marianne Matzo.
Beep, 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 beep.
This is what he does the whole time I'm talking. I can look at him just nodding off.
Are we on?
Charles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Yes.
Hi.
Yes, I am. Sam, I am.
So please, relax. Not
Okay.
as relaxed as Charles is, but relax. Put your feet up.
Okay.
Get something good to eat. Tighten your garters. Take off your girdle. I don't know. Whatever. And come and listen to our show.
About a man named Jed, poor mountaineer, barely kept... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You know what? I still call the pool the cement pond. So, in the first half, we have our recipe of the week. In the second half, I'm going to talk about life expectancy. And in the third half, Charlie's going to talk about death planning by computer app.
Yes, exactly.
So our recipe of the week falls into the category of foods that are called novelty desserts. As if desserts could be any more fun than they already are, there are ways to make them more fun. So novelty desserts typically feature a secret, improbable ingredient like mayonnaise in cake batter or vinegar in pie. Others feel like magic tricks, like with a hot fudge sundae cake, where there's a thick layer of chocolate sauce that forms in the bottom of the pan during baking.
Now, you see, that would be a magic trick because that would make that bad boy disappear. Go on.
Yeah. Yeah. So the heyday of these desserts was in the mid-1900s during the rise of convenience food and all kinds of new appliances in American kitchens. People just wanted to play with their stuff. So, Charlie, what mad scientific recipe do you have for us today?
Going way back to 2006, not that way back, but it is in the past. Cook's County magazine asked subscribers to send in their best lost recipes. The goal was to identify heirloom recipes marooned in time and overlooked by cookbooks. Recipes for mile-high bologna pie. You know, I have my mile-high experience with my bologna. Well, let's not go there. Oh, geez, what the hell is that about?
Bad.
Thank you very much. So, mile-high bologna pie, sauerkraut cake, to name a few, were submitted. So this week's recipe is for peach puzzle. The ingredients are simple. Peaches sweetened with brown sugar syrup, but baked around an upside-down ramekin, all under a light crust. After it's taken out of the oven, the cooling process naturally forces the syrup inside the ramekin. With a quick flip onto a plate, you're serving up a wreath of roasted peaches with a convenient cup of sauce for drizzling at the center.
And I cannot figure out scientifically why the sauce would go up into the ramekin. I need somebody who's like good with, I guess, physics to write to me and explain that.
Well, I don't know if Lois Schladelman is great at physics, but Ms. Schladelman of Stowe, Ohio, submitted this recipe. So, but she didn't develop the recipe herself. Still, she has a faded clipping from the Buffalo Evening News that her mother sent her with the original recipe, printed more than 70 years ago. For some reason, though, Peach Puzzle never made it past the Schladelman's kitchen until now. And you can see and you can see a picture of this bad boy, of course, on our website. And for that, please go to our website for a link for the recipe and additional resources for this program. We hope you will follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and remember to rate and review this podcast. As a nonprofit organization, we are always ready and very appreciative of your donations. Please go to our webpage to donate in support of our work. everyonedies.org. That's dies.org.
Yes, we would appreciate that. So,
Hmm.
Charlie, I don't know if you've been noticing, but this week the headlines have been full of discussions about life expectancy.
Yes.
And you noticed it? Okay, good. So
Yeah. You can't swing. You can't swing a dead cat without knowing anything about life expectancies, Marianne.
Oh, well.
Sure, we get a lot
hope
of
you leave
cards and letters about that.
Leave the dead cats alone, please.
Okay.
So I thought it would maybe be helpful to people if we talked about what this really is, and because we throw around words like life expectancy, like we know what we're talking about, and I would bet dollars to donuts that some of the subtlety of how that's calculated and what that is lost on a lot of people. So you need your grafting calculator, and your pocket protector and a few pencils, and we're gonna break this bad boy apart.
Very good.
So in the last year, our country has experienced over 610,000 deaths, with 1 in 3 Americans having experienced the death of someone to the coronavirus.
Oh, okay.
43% of these deaths have occurred in the first 6 months of 2021.
Right.
So this pandemic has had economic impacts in terms of businesses closing and people dying who would have otherwise contributed to the economy, paid taxes, things like that. It's had emotional, social impact, which included not only hastening death from people who were already not really in good health, but that virus was that last straw that they really could not fight. Not to mention the grief and loss related to those deaths and the social upheaval from the politicalization of the pandemic.
Yes.
But let's talk about a long-term effect, which is life expectancy, which, as I said, we've been hearing in the news. What does change in life expectancy even mean? First, what is life expectancy? So I'm just getting all choked up here. So life expectancy is a statistical idea that reflects death rates in a given place and time. So the term life expectancy refers to the number of years a person can expect to live.
Mm-hmm.
So by definition, life expectancy is based on an estimate of the average age that members of a particular population group will be when they die. So you'll hear people talk about life expectancy at birth. So it'd be like if we had a baby today, what would be their life expectancy? What could we expect given the same conditions that we're in currently? So, those people who go to school and get degrees in actuary science, these are the people who figure this stuff out. So it's all about numbers. It's all about the math. It's nothing about opinion or what political party you belong to.
Exactly.
It's just all about the math. So the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, report, it just came out, which is why you're hearing so much about this, describes life expectancy at birth as the average number of years a group of infants would live if they were to experience throughout their life the age-specific death rates prevailing during a period. Meaning, here's what's going on in a given period. If they experience what, is the average thing that's going on, then here's how long you can expect them to live. So if, God forbid, there was an atomic bomb were to go off today, and a week from now, babies are born, then their environment is living in a post-atomic bomb world, and so their life expectancy would be reflected by those conditions.
Got it.
Kind of makes sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, it isn't meant to predict the actual lifespans that people born in that period will experience. Rather, it's a way to compare death rates across geographies and across years. So, back if you were born in, like my grandmother was born in 1897. If you were born in 1897, their life expectancy based on the conditions of the world at that time were considerably lower than when I was born in 1957. So there's a difference. So in the 20th century, life expectancy generally increased in wealthy countries as science and sanitation helped conquer infectious diseases. In the United States, troubling signs that the country wasn't keeping up with other nations' gains in this measure emerged in the 1990s. This divergence came to be known as the U.S. health disadvantage. So the health disadvantage comes from the United States being among the wealthiest in the world, but it's far from the healthiest.
Yeah.
Although life expectancy and survival rates in the United States have improved dramatically over the last century, Americans live shorter lives and experience more injuries and illnesses than people in other high-income countries. So we're not comparing ourselves to a third world country. We compare, United States is compared to like France and England and,
Canada,
people who have this sort of same economic state that we're in, so that you're comparing similar kinds of things. But in that group, we come out health-wise looking like a third world country. So the U.S. disadvantage cannot be attributed solely to not being very healthy of racial or ethnic minorities or of people living in poverty. Even highly advantaged Americans are in worse health than their counterparts in other peer countries. So even the people with money, even the people that have health care and can afford to sort of
take care of themselves,
better care of themselves,
better care of themselves, right? That's the
are not as healthy as what their peers are in other countries.
And
so
are you gonna tell us why that is?
Well, no, I'm just gonna leave that there and walk away. So,
oh my God, dead air. Which is the rate we're going. Air is not the only thing that's going to be dead. So I'm sorry. Go on, Maria.
Thanks. So, developed countries like the United States would not expect to see declining life expectancy given access to health care, sanitation, good nutrition, and not dying at birth. So those are the things that are going to affect our life expectancy. How many in the late 1800s, how many kids died during birth? I mean, it was a pretty kind of normal thing along with their moms. So those kinds of things are going to affect life expectancy. We have good sanitation. We have access to good nutrition. We have access to good health care. And yet it hasn't positively affected our life expectancy. So in 2020, the U.S. life expectancy declined by 1.5 years, which is the steepest decline since World War II, and the second largest decline since the 1918 influenza pandemic, which is believed to have killed about 50 million people worldwide. So the first years of the pandemic delivered a bigger blow in American life expectancy than any year of the Vietnam War, the AIDS crisis, or the deaths of despair that nudged down life expectancy in the mid-2010s. So the deaths of despair, those are deaths related to drugs, alcohol, and suicide. And these increase in deaths by these causes, have their own name. God help us. That started in around 2010 and continues. So life expectancy at birth in the United States went from 78.8 years to 77.3 years. The decline is attributed to COVID-19. They're saying about 74% of that loss of 1.5 years is related to COVID, but followed by unintentional injuries at about 11% and homicide by about 3%. The life expectancy for men dropped 1.8 years. Now, I don't know if you know it or not, but women have a longer life expectancy than men.
Right.
Because we are the superior gender. I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? So,
well, you have no argument from me about that.
So men typically, in terms of life expectancy, don't live as long. So life expectancy is down to 74.5 years. So in 2019, it was 76.3 years. And in 2020, it went down to 74 years. While women went from 81.4 years in 2019, 81.4 to 80.2 years in 2020, with a loss of, air quotes, 1.2 years. So men lost, 1.8 years, women lost 1.2 years. Between the sexes, the age divide widened by a gap of 5.7 years, where before that it was 5.1 years. So it just, again, reinforces my theory that marry young, at least 5 years younger than you are. So the story doesn't end there.
Okay.
In all U.S. citizens, if all U.S. citizens saw the same decline, if everybody lost 1.8 or 1.2, you'd say that's really upsetting. Doggone this COVID primarily. And if all developed countries had the same decline, we would feel that at least everyone had poor long-term effects. Everybody is suffering because, misery loves company. But neither is true, Charlie. It's not true.
Well, then what is it?
It was a global pandemic, so it's reasonable to assume that every country is going to take a hit.
Right.
The 2020 pandemic decline widened the distance in life expectancy between the U.S. and wealthy democracies like France, Israel, South Korea, and the United Kingdom, according to research recently published by the British Medical Journal. So class gaps in life expectancy are greater in the United States than in other rich countries. So class gaps are worse than if you look at all these other wealthy democracies. However, minority communities in the United States saw the steepest decline in 2020, with the Hispanic community experiencing the largest loss of 3 years in their life expectancy.
Jeez, okay.
From 81.8 years to 78.8 years.
So why so much more?
Well, let me finish, dude.
Sorry.
Oh, I know. So, Hispanic communities' largest loss was 3 years, followed by non-Hispanic Black community at 2.9 years, from 74.7 years to 71.8 years. Even worse, I don't know if it's worse in my opinion, but equally upsetting is that Native Americans who had a high death rate during the pandemic were not included in this study because there wasn't enough data. Nobody was looking at the Native American populations.
Why not?
Well, all right. Why not?
They were here first, so you'd think maybe check them first. I'm sorry, go on. What?
Well, we follow and we put money into things that are most important to us. And so I'm just going to leave that there.
All right.
So how much of this was related to COVID-19? This huge drop for the Hispanic community of 3 years and non-Black Hispanics, non-Hispanic Blacks to 2.9 years. The pandemic was responsible for 90% of the decline among the Hispanic community, but only 60% of the decline among non-Hispanic Blacks.
Oh.
And 69% in non-Hispanic whites. The decline in life expectancy would have been greater. It would have been worse, Charlie, except we are seeing a decline in deaths from cancer, chronic lower respiratory diseases, heart disease, and suicide. So these declines offset COVID-19 a bit.
Okay.
So it would have been worse, but we got better in some other things, and so it wasn't as bad. So what do we know about this? I mean, what do we learn from this? I think one of the things is that we're more unequal than we used to be. There's always been this discussion about a race gap.
Okay.
That there's people that have access to things and people who don't have access to things. And I used to kind of, obviously I'm a white woman. Well, I don't know how obvious it is, but I'll just admit it. That I am a white woman. But I've had the experience numerous times, not just once, Charlie, numerous times, where, I worked for the VA before I retired, and that's my health insurance since I've retired. And it's called, Blue Cross Blue Shield Fed. And so I'll call to make an appointment, like when I had cancer or when I had to get a new primary provider. And my primary provider, they said, well, this doctor screens people and she has to decide if she's going to accept you. I said, okay. And she said, do you smoke? I said, no. She says, well, the doctor doesn't take anybody who smokes. I said, okay. She said, are you overweight? I said, well, no, I guess not. All right, well, the doctor doesn't take anybody who's overweight. And then the third thing was, what kind of health insurance do you have? And I said, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield Fed. And she said, okay, when would you like an appointment? And that has been my experience whenever I've had to go, to a new provider. When I say Blue Cross Blue Shield Fed, like, that's good insurance. Yep, we'll take you. And I also know from being a nurse and taking care of patients that if they say they have Medicare, it is very, very difficult to find a physician, healthcare practitioner who is going to accept them because they can legally cap how many people who are on Medicaid and how many are on Medicare and Medicaid. And once they've kind of served the expected percentage of community within their practice, they don't have to take any more. And so if you're calling around and he's like, I need a new doctor, I need this, you can have a very difficult time finding somebody who will take you with those insurances. If you have no insurance, it's even worse.
Yeah.
So the U.S. has had a much larger decrease in life expectancy between 2018 and 2020 than other high-income nations, which these pronounced losses among the Hispanics and the non-Hispanic Black populations are incredible. An outstanding and widening U.S. health disadvantage, high death rates in 2020, and the continued inequitable effects on racial and ethnic minority groups are likely to be the products of longstanding longstanding policy choices, and systemic racism. As I said, we fund the things that are important to us. We fund the groups that are important to us. If there's a disaster in a well-heeled or rich city, let's say if there was a disaster in
Miami Beach, Miami.
Okay, we'll go with that. There will be a greater response than, let's say, New Orleans.
Right.
So as a society, I think that it's worthwhile to note this in terms of the choices that we make, that we realize, well, if we have access to healthy food, but we still live on Fritos, and Charlie, I'm talking to you.
Oh, I wish you were lying, but unfortunately not. But it's not a steady diet.
No, because you have martinis in there somewhere.
Well, yeah, hello.
So, I mean, we have choices that we can make in terms of our health, in terms of our exercise, in terms of how we're living our life that, will affect our life expectancy. And so we talk about, everyone dies. I don't care if you eat the most perfect diet in the world and you exercise perfectly and you don't smoke and you don't do anything. You're still going to die. You're still going to die.
Yep.
But it might be later. Or it might be that you are incredibly healthy right up until you do die.
Exactly.
Which is a very different scenario than if you have lung disease or heart disease or anything else secondary to smoking, obesity, and inactivity. These are the choices that we control. There have been articles, I don't know if you've been reading these, and I don't want to go too far off track, of people who were not vaccinated for the COVID, did not take the COVID vaccine.
Yep.
And then they're dying in the hospital.
Yeah.
And they're saying, please give me the vaccine now.
Yes,
I didn't know that this was this bad. I thought it was a hoax. I thought, whatever it is that they thought. And the nurses, it's, because the nurses are at the bedside with people, the nurses are the ones who who say to them, it's too late.
It's
now.
too late. Yeah.
It's too late. And we will all come to a point in our lives where it's too late for whatever it is, making time for our kids or, I don't know, being nice to people, whatever it is, donating to Everyone Dies. There's going to come a point where it's too late. So before it's too late, think about what it is you want for your life in terms of your health and your relationships, and start now. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We have right now. So make right now count and make good choices.
Well said. Absolutely.
So, Charlie, what do you have for us for the third half?
Well, after that cheery exposition,
I am just the princess of happiness.
Good.
Wait, I've got my bell.
So, well, actually, following in step with that, the Observer, a local paper in different localities, published an article about apps that have been developed for death planning. The death and just, and always here, we, give, talk about a lot of different ways to prepare at very many different levels. And this is just something else. You prepare your death. So the death of a loved one can be an overwhelming experience, obviously. Family members and friends are often expected to deal with the vast administrative burdens that come with death at a time when they desperately need to grieve. And although death eventually comes for all of us, a surprising number of people have no real plan in place for when the end of their life approaches. Data suggests that although 90% of Americans think that talking to their loved ones about end-of-life logistics is very important, but in actuality, only about less than 30%, like 26, 20%, 7% have done so. With that in mind, there are many, and everything is about convenience. We are Americans, after all. There are many online apps to help this process. Some target a specific aspect of the death planning process, such as Safe Beyond, which allows users to record messages for the people that they leave behind to access after they die. And remember, with something like this, you need to tell the people, hey, by the way, I have this. When I'm dead, you can just click this on. So you can't hide it in your drawer or something. You need to let people know it's out there. And yes, so Safe Beyond. Another one, others such as leading end-of-life planning app, Cake, offer a more rounded approach, guiding individuals through everything from writing a will to planning an eco-friendly funeral. Liz Eddy launched end-of-life planning app Lantern in 2019 after struggling with the death of several family members. David Kessler's 21-year-old son died suddenly, and he found himself embroiled in a logistical nightmare when trying to close his late son's bank account. He discovered Empathy, an app that claims to streamline end-of-life bureaucracy and promises to automate some of the more complicated aspects of the post-death process. David was impressed by how technology could reconfigure end-of-life planning. Loss has no demographic. It affects everyone at some point in their life. Technology can't promise to take the pain away, but it can hold your hand through the process whilst also offering guidance in the then often unknown terrain of grief. And just one thing to throw in, about wills and everything, really, please have a will. You write it.
Well, there's a will, there's a way, Charles.
Yes, and apps, of course, now, is one of the ways. You do not want to die without a will because, your local government, your state government will run you through the gauntlet to make sure you are, your survivor is the person entitled to whatever property, but then that person is going to have to spring for lawyers. If you have family members, and I've dealt with clients who've been in this situations. Family members are estranged, haven't heard from anyone. You have a life partner, a significant other, whom you've never married. Well, guess if you die without a will, for the most part, that estranged family member will be looked at as the person who could take everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen where
yes.
I had a friend in a relationship, and the guy died, and first off, nobody in the family knew they were living together as partners. They thought they were friends. They didn't know the guys were gay. So in this death came out a lot of information.
Yeah.
But because there was no will and because there was no anything, the way in Oklahoma is that there's sort of a tier. So the parents get the money. And then if the parents aren't there, then the siblings get the money. Okay. Well, in this case, both the father and the mother were alive. But this man really did not have a relationship with the father and would not have wanted his money to go to his father. But it did.
Yeah. So please keep that in mind, folks. And with that, remember about technology, what I started talking about, because technology can nudge us into asking the right questions about what we'd want towards the end of life. But it can't help us answer those essential questions, such as a will, a healthcare proxy. What do you want a doctor to do to you? Things like that, when you're at the end of your life. So there are sites, videos, and apps on our podcast that talk very openly about choices we might face at the end of our lives. And it seems like these are prompting people to take control and actually tell their clinicians what they would and wouldn't want. Technology may push us further into that openness and peer-supported empowerment. So we've included links to several of these apps on our website, which again, everyonedies.org, dies.org. So,
and
please stay.
Can I jump
yes.
in there? Can I jump in, Charlie?
Yeah, please.
Thanks. So I just want to say that with the educational stuff that we do, I look at all the links that I give you and make sure that it's accurate information. These links to these computer programs, and we don't have the skill set to vet them. We're just saying here's some that were that we talked about today. So I hope I don't want to say we take no responsibility for what happens. I don't want to say that. I just want to say that we have not personally gone on and signed up for any of these services. So make sure you look at reviews online and check them out. Make sure that this is the one I want to use, because we're not recommending any one in particular, because Charlie and I are Luddites. So.
And with that, not the Luddite part, but with technology, I mean, there are a lot of folks who either don't like technology, and even just simple things like having an email address, it's just not their cup of tea, which is absolutely fine. But you do now know the building blocks that if you don't have a will, somebody is going to get screwed, and not in a fun way. So if you don't want to do it through technology, not a problem. Find a local lawyer, talk to people, see what other friends have done.
Centers,
yes,
right?
Yeah, and in medium size and bigger cities, a lot of these services are. And again, it's not across the board, but a lot of times you can find places which will, help you out with a will or do some of these things for free. So please, there's no excuse. Protect yourself and protect the people you love, or at least tolerate. So with that thought in mind, hey, thanks for listening, and please tune in for further adventures of Everyone Dies. Exactly. And thank you for listening. So this is Charlie Navarrete reminding you what the great Sitting Bull once said: if we must die, we die defending our rights. And he said that over 100 years ago. Marianne.
And I'm Marianne Batso. And we look forward to talking with you soon. Remember, every day is a gift. Have a great week.
Bye.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.